The night Harper Lane's world collapsed wasn't the night she expected to die, but it was the night something inside her did. She sat alone in the dim hospital room, weak from the surgery that had taken months of her strength, clutching the discharge papers still warm from the printer. The fluorescent lights flickered overhead, casting long shadows across the cold tile floor. She thought Brandon, her husband of 4 years, would walk in at any moment, concerned, relieved, ready to take her home. But instead, he arrived with a stack of documents and a woman she had never seen before. "Sign them," Brandon said, dropping the divorce papers onto her lap as if she were an employee who hadn't met a deadline. His tone was crisp, corporate, devoid of even the memory of love. "I can't carry you anymore, Harper, and frankly, I don't want to." The woman beside him smirked, tapping her manicured nails against the rail of Harper's hospital bed. Harper felt her pulse stumble, her breath shorten. She tried to speak, but the words collapsed inside her chest, just like the hope she'd been clinging to. Brandon continued, "The board thinks your condition makes you unstable. It's better if we separate quietly. And don't worry, I've already moved your things out." Her mouth went dry. "Moved my Brandon. I just had surgery. I can't even walk without help." "That's not my problem anymore," he replied, adjusting his Rolex as if the conversation bored him. "I have a future to protect." And it more did. Harper's vision blurred, the room tilting as her heart strained against the weight of betrayal. The beeping monitor beside her quickened, a frantic rhythm. She gripped the bedsheet, fighting to stay conscious. And as Brandon turned to leave with his mistress on his arm, Harper realized she had no home, no job, no allies, nothing but a body barely holding together and a soul he had just shattered. Yet fate was already moving toward her, quietly, deliberately. Someone powerful had been watching everything Brandon had done, and he was about to step into her story. Harper Lane had never imagined her life could shrink so quickly, from boardrooms lined with glass walls to the back seat of a taxi that smelled faintly of old leather and rain. Hours after Brandon dumped divorce papers on her hospital bed, she found herself clutching a thin blanket the nurse had insisted she take, her fingers trembling as the city lights streaked past the window. Every bump in the road sent a sharp ache through her abdomen, a reminder of the surgery she was barely strong enough to survive. She pressed her forehead against the cool glass. Just last year, she had been a rising star in the branding world. Companies on Park Avenue lined up to hire her, calling her the woman who could make a product breathe. She'd climbed every rung on her own, no famous last name, no wealthy parents, no shortcuts. Just grit, instinct, and the kind of quiet brilliance that made CEOs lean forward when she spoke. But everything had unraveled the moment her health failed. A rare complication, emergency surgery. Weeks in a hospital bed. Brandon had visited twice, both times rushing out after answering emails the entire time. Still, Harper believed he loved her. She believed he would stay. She had never been more wrong. The taxi stopped in front of the small sublet apartment her friend had found for her at the last minute, a narrow walk-up in West Village. The driver helped her out, his brows knitting with concern when she swayed. Harper managed a faint smile. "I'll be okay." But as she stared at the steep flight of stairs leading to her temporary home, her heart sank. She wasn't sure she could lift her own legs. Step by shaky step, she climbed, dragging herself upward, using the railing. When she reached the top, her breath was shallow, sweat beading along her hairline. She leaned against the wall, letting the dizziness wash over her. Inside, the apartment was barely furnished. A sagging couch, a single lamp, the faint scent of dust. Brandon had taken everything they'd owned, the furniture, the dishes, even the framed photographs. He had sent her a curt message earlier. "Your belongings didn't fit my new space. Do whatever you want with them." Her belongings? Her life? Harper lowered herself onto the couch, every muscle protesting. She felt the hollow noise inside her chest grow louder, like an echo in an empty house. She wrapped her arms around her ribs, as if she could hold herself together by force. But the silence didn't last long. Her phone buzzed one notification from her bank. Then another. And another. She blinked at the screen. Account frozen for suspicious activity. Transfer requested by authorized owner. Authorized owner. Brandon. He hadn't only abandoned her, he had cut off the last stability she had. Harper's throat tightened as she tried to steady her breathing, but the panic clawed up anyway. She had nothing. No income, no savings, no family, and a body that felt like it might collapse again at any moment. Thunder rolled in the distance. Rain pattered against the window, gentle at first, then harder, like the city itself was grieving for her. Harper curled up slowly on the couch, hugging the thin hospital blanket. Her eyes stung, but the tears didn't fall. She didn't have the strength for crying. What she couldn't know was that somewhere downtown, a black sedan slowed in front of the hospital. A man in a tailored charcoal coat stepped out, reviewing a report someone had delivered to him hours earlier. A report about Brandon Hale, and about the woman Brandon had just discarded. He whispered her name once, softly, Harper Lane, before ordering his driver to take him to her. New York had always been a city of noise, honking cabs, subway rumbles, late-night conversations drifting out of open windows. But to Harper Lane, the city had never felt so silent. The next morning, she stood at her window in the tiny West Village apartment, staring at the rain-washed streets below. People moved with purpose, umbrellas bobbing as they hurried to work, their lives intact and untouched. She envied them. Just a year ago, she had been part of that rhythm. She had walked confidently through the revolving doors of Hale Analytics, her portfolio tucked under her arm, her heels clicking across the marble lobby. She remembered the elevator walls lined with mirrors, reflecting her image polished, capable, unstoppable. Now she barely recognized her reflection in the dusty glass of the apartment window. Pale skin, dark circles under her eyes, hair pulled into a loose knot because lifting her arms too long still hurt. Everything she had built professionally, financially, emotionally, had collapsed in a matter of days. And New York, with its glittering towers and relentless momentum, didn't slow down, not even for a moment, to acknowledge her fall. Her stomach clenched. She forced herself to breathe. She had to figure out what came next, but her mind felt foggy from the pain meds, and her body begged her to lie down again. Still, she pushed herself to move, grabbing the nearest notebook. Planning made her feel alive. Planning made her feel like Harper Lane again. But before she could write a single word, the door buzzer shrieked through the apartment. Harper stiffened. She wasn't expecting anyone. No one knew she lived here except her friend Mia, and Mia was working a double shift today. With trembling steps, Harper made her way to the intercom. A delivery, she thought. She hadn't ordered anything. She pressed the speaker button. Hello? Package for Harper Lane. A male voice answered. She hesitated. Brandon Sabotage had taught her not to trust anything blindly. But she finally opened the front door and descended the stairs slowly, gripping the railing for support. The delivery man stood under the small awning, rain dripping off his jacket. He held a sleek black envelope, far too elegant to be junk mail or some random mistake. For you, he said. Harper signed for it with shaking fingers. When she returned to the apartment, she sat on the couch, staring at the envelope like it might explode. Her name was embossed in silver, the script precise and expensive. No return address. Then she noticed the wax seal. A crest she had seen before. Cross Rivers. Her breath hitched. That was Colton Rivers' company, the youngest billionaire CEO in the country, the man who'd built an AI-driven empire out of a garage at 22. The man Brandon idolized and secretly feared. Why would a man like Colton Rivers send anything to her? Heart pounding, Harper broke the seal. Inside was a single card. Harper Lane, we need to meet. Today. Iki, 0 p.m. Cross Rivers Tower, Park Avenue. C. R. She read the card again. And again. There was no explanation, no reason, no hint of what he wanted. But the moment she held the letter, something fluttered in her chest, a feeling she hadn't allowed herself in weeks. Hope. Sharp, terrifying, fragile hope. Harper stood slowly, clutching the card. For the first time since the hospital, she felt a direction pulling her forward. But she didn't notice the black sedan that had parked across the street, nor the man inside it, watching her window, waiting for her reaction. He lifted his phone and whispered, "She got it." Phase 1 begins. Brandon Hale had always been the kind of man people mistook for brilliant. He carried himself with the crisp confidence of a polished executive, tailored suits, sharp jawline, a Rolex that caught every shard of light in the room. But beneath the cultivated charm was something darker, something colder. Harper had seen glimpses of it over the years, moments where his smile vanished too quickly or where his ambition pressed against the edges of cruelty. But she had ignored the signs, believing love meant patience. Now she understood what a mistake that had been. At that exact moment, in the glass-wrapped penthouse he once promised they'd grow old in together, Brandon stood before a wall-length mirror, adjusting his tie. His new girlfriend lounged on the white leather sofa, her legs crossed, absently flipping through a luxury design magazine. She glanced at Brandon with an amused smirk. "You look nervous," she teased. "I'm not nervous," Brandon snapped, then caught himself. "I just have a big week ahead." He wasn't lying. Hale Analytics was finally on the verge of signing its largest deal ever, selling a proprietary predictive algorithm to an international conglomerate. What he didn't mention, what no one knew, was that the algorithm wasn't entirely his. It had been born in a notebook Harper had written during her early years with the company, a notebook he had quietly taken and repackaged as his own creation. He'd always assumed she would never find out. After all, she trusted him. Or she used to. Brandon straightened his jacket, admiring the reflection of a man who believed he had everything under control. Harper's illness had been an inconvenience, nothing more. He needed a partner who could keep up, someone who didn't slow him down with emotional or physical fragility. Ending the marriage felt efficient, necessary, correct. He didn't feel guilt, he felt relief. As he headed toward the elevator, his phone buzzed. A notification from one of his security contractors. Subject: Harper Lane. Status: received the envelope. Brandon froze. "What envelope?" his girlfriend asked lazily. He didn't respond. His pulse drummed a warning against his ribs. Someone was watching Harper, someone with resources, and someone had reached her before he could decide how to manage the situation. His jaw clenched. He had spent months crafting the narrative that Harper was unstable, unfit, overwhelmed. The board believed him. Investors believed him. The divorce court paperwork even described her as emotionally compromised, a phrase he had encouraged his lawyers to push. He couldn't let her resurface. Not now. Not when everything was finally aligning for him. He dialed a private number. "Find out who sent that envelope," he ordered quietly, "and do it fast. I don't like surprises." He ended the call and slipped his phone into his pocket, unaware that the very surprise he feared was already unfolding in ways he couldn't control. Across town, Harper clutched the invitation from Cross Rivers Tower, unsure whether it was a lifeline or a trap. And miles above Manhattan, in a penthouse Brandon dreamed of one day owning, a much larger player was watching everything with keen interest. Someone who not only knew about Brandon's theft but had proof. And he was ready to use it the moment Harper walked through his door. Harper arrived at Cross Rivers Tower with her heartbeat thudding like footsteps in an empty hallway. The building itself felt unreal, sleek steel, glass walls reflecting the Manhattan skyline, security staff greeting her with the kind of formal politeness normally reserved for ambassadors or royalty. She wondered if they had mistaken her for someone important, someone whole. The elevator whooshed upward, floors blurring past until it opened into a corridor lined with quiet, warm lighting. Soft jazz drifted from somewhere unseen. Everything felt intentional, curated, controlled, the exact opposite of the chaos her life had become. A woman with a neat bun and a black blazer approached her. "Miss Lane, Mr. Rivers is expecting you." The words sent a chill along Harper's spine. She followed the woman into a meeting room with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Central Park. A long conference table stretched across the room, empty except for a single leather folder placed neatly at the head. For a moment, Harper wondered if she was early. But then the door clicked shut behind her. She turned. Colton Rivers stood there, the youngest CEO in American history. A Man magazine covers described as the untouchable visionary. He wore no tie, just a simple charcoal button-down and confidence that didn't need embellishing. "Harper," he said, as if they were old friends. His voice was steady, smooth, unexpectedly warm. "Thank you for coming." End quote. She swallowed, unsure why her pulse quickened. "You sent for me. I'm not entirely sure why." He nodded once, studying her with those sharply attentive eyes. She felt exposed, like he could see through the exhaustion, the pain, the jagged pieces of her life. Colton gestured to the chair opposite him. "Sit. There's something you need to see." She hesitated, then lowered herself carefully into the seat. He slid the leather folder toward her. "Open it. Thank you for watching." Her fingers trembled as she lifted the cover. Inside were printed diagrams, coding frameworks, algorithmic charts, and her breath caught. She recognized them. Not copied. Not altered. Exact replicas of the models she had created 2 years ago. The work she had scribbled into her notebook during late nights at the office. The work she thought was lost forever when Brandon claimed she misfiled it. "These are mine," she whispered. "How did you get these?" "Because," Colton said calmly, "your husband tried to sell them to me last month." Her world tilted. Colton continued. His presentation was sloppy, inconsistent, and frankly, not his style. "So I did a deeper dive. Your name was embedded in the metadata of the original files." He leaned forward. "Brandon stole this from you." Harper closed her eyes, gripping the folder to steady herself. She had suspected Brandon betrayed her in ways beyond emotional cruelty, but seeing proof was different. It was shattering. Colton watched her, his expression unreadable but not unkind. "I'm telling you this because he plans to use your work in a keynote next week. If he secures the sale, he'll walk away with millions, and you'll walk away with nothing." Her throat tightened. "Why are you telling me this? What do you want from me?" Colton's gaze hardened not toward her, but toward the man who had wronged her. "Because I don't like thieves," he said, "and because Hale Analytics is crumbling faster than he realizes." He paused, letting the weight of his next words settle. "And because, Harper, you're the key to taking him down." She stared at him, heart pounding. Brandon had stripped her of everything. But now, someone far more powerful was offering her a weapon sharper than revenge. The truth. And Colton Rivers wasn't finished. He had one more revelation Harper wasn't remotely prepared for. Harper walked out of Cross Rivers Tower with the leather folder pressed against her chest as if it were the last fragile piece of herself she could still hold together. The city roared around her, traffic, voices, taxi horns, but everything felt muffled, distant, like she was underwater. She reached the sidewalk and stopped, unable to breathe. Her work, her ideas, her years of sacrifice. Stolen, sold, weaponized. She gripped the folder tighter. The world tilted, and she steadied herself against a lamppost. Her body was still too weak to handle emotional blows, let alone an avalanche like this. She had walked into the building, hoping for clarity, maybe even opportunity. But she hadn't been ready for the truth, how deep Brandon's betrayal went, how intentionally he had dismantled her life. A sharp pain shot through her abdomen. She winced, lowering herself onto a bench. Rain had started again, sprinkling lightly, dotting her jacket, cooling her overheated skin. She felt small and breakable, a woman the world had tossed aside without apology. For a moment, she let the despair wash over her. She had lost her marriage, her home, her career, her savings, her health. And now, the one thing she thought she still had, her mind, her vision had been violated too. A group of professionals in tailored coats strode past her, laughing as they hurried across the crosswalk. They didn't see her. No one did. She leaned forward, burying her face in her hands. A sob escaped before she could choke it back. Then another. Her ribs trembled, her breath broken and uneven. She hated crying, especially in public, but the grief was too heavy, an ocean pulling her under. A memory flickered, Brandon telling her, "You're not built for pressure, Harper. You break too easily." Another memory. Him taking credit for her ideas during meetings while she stayed silent, believing it didn't matter because they were a team. Another. The night he told her she was lucky he chose her, because someone like him needed to be with a winner. Ice sea. Lightning cracked somewhere beyond the buildings. The rain thickened, falling in thin sheets now. Harper sat there, trembling, soaked, unable to move. Pain radiated through her body, not just physical pain, but a deeper hurt, the kind that bruised the soul. She felt it rising, a terrible fear. What if he was right? What if she wasn't strong enough? What if she really was broken? She closed her eyes, wishing she could disappear into the rain. But then, her phone buzzed. Once, twice, 3 times in rapid succession. Harper wiped her tears and pulled it out with shaking fingers. Unknown number. Do not be alone right now. Known number. Your husband isn't done with you. Unknown number. Come back inside Cross Rivers Tower. Her breath caught. Another message arrived, this one containing a picture. A blurry photo of Brandon standing outside her apartment building, his posture tense, his expression sharp, scanning the street as if hunting for someone. Her stomach twisted. How did he know where she lived? Why was he there? What did he want now? She looked up, heart thundering. Across the street, a black sedan she hadn't noticed before had its headlights on, engine humming softly. And the man inside wasn't Brandon. He was watching her with calculating intensity, phone still in his hand waiting for her reaction. Then the sedan door opened, and the man stepped out into the rain, walking directly toward her. Rain dripped from Harper's hair as the man approached, each step slow and deliberate. He didn't shield himself from the storm. He didn't need to. His presence carved space in the chaos, the kind of presence that made even the rain hesitate. "Miss Lane," he said, his voice low, steady, unmistakably in control. "You shouldn't be out here alone." Harper recognized him instantly. Colton Rivers. Seeing him outside the glass tower where he ruled an empire felt surreal, like two separate worlds had collided at her feet. She rose unsteadily from the bench, clutching the leather folder. Why are you?" "You weren't safe," Colton said, keeping his gaze on her face, assessing the tremble in her hands, the pain she tried to hide. "And you're still not." She swallowed hard. "What do you mean I'm not safe?" He exhaled, the muscles in his jaw tightening. Brandon was supposed to be at a closed-door investor meeting this afternoon, but he walked out the moment he received a notification that you left the building. "He's been circling your block since." The words landed like ice in her stomach. "He wouldn't." She stopped. She couldn't lie to herself anymore. Brandon would. Brandon already had. Why is he doing this? Colton stepped closer, lowering his voice. "Because he thinks you know more than you do." Her pulse rattled. "Know what?" He paused too long. "Colton," she whispered. "What aren't you telling me?" Thunder cracked overhead, rain sheeted between them. Colton finally spoke. "Your husband didn't just steal your work," he said. "He used it as collateral." Her brows drew together. "Collateral for what?" "For a merger he can't afford to lose," Colton replied. "If he fails, he doesn't only lose his company, he defaults on debts you know nothing about. Debts he acquired under both your names." "And Telv." Harper's body went rigid. "Under my name? But how? I never signed anything." Colton looked at her with something that resembled regret. "No, you didn't." Understanding dawned slowly. Brandon forged her signature. Her knees nearly buckled. Colton caught her arm, steadying her with surprising gentleness. "That's why he's desperate," Colton continued. "If the merger collapses, the financial fallout hits you as hard as him, maybe harder." Harper's breath caught in her throat. She felt sick, dizzy, betrayed at a level she didn't even know was possible. "No," she whispered. "No, he wouldn't. He couldn't." "He already did," Colton said quietly. She covered her mouth, trying to hold in the sob clawing its way up her chest. Rain blurred her vision. Or maybe those were tears. Why was Colton telling her all this? Why help her at all? As if reading her mind, he added, "I've been tracking Hale Analytics for over a year. Something about Brandon's numbers never aligned. When I discovered the algorithm was yours, everything clicked." She blinked at him. "Why would you care?" His eyes softened. "Just slightly. Because brilliance deserves protection, and because I don't like seeing good people destroyed to hide someone else's corruption." For a moment, Harper forgot the rain, the pain, the fear. Someone finally saw her not as a liability, not as a burden, but as someone worth saving. Colton lowered his hand from her arm, but his voice remained firm. "You have more power than you think, Harper, but only if you stop letting him write the story." She stared up at him, her heartbeat unsteady. "What am I supposed to do now?" she whispered. Colton didn't hesitate. "You come with me," he said, "and you fight back." A black SUV pulled up to the curb behind him, windows tinted, engine humming like something alive. Colton opened the door, waiting. Harper hesitated, rain dripping from her lashes, the leather folder clutched against her chest. If she stepped inside, there was no going back. And just as she moved to take a step forward, her phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. "Don't trust him. You don't know who he really is." Harper didn't move at first. The rain dripped from her coat in silver threads as she stared at the buzzing phone in her hand. "Don't trust him. You don't know who he really is." Her pulse hummered. The world felt split in two. The The dark SUV waiting for her, a doorway to something unknown, and the message glowing coldly on her screen. Colton watched her, unreadable. "You don't have to answer now," he said, "but you do need to decide who you want to be from this moment on." Those words pierced through the fog of fear, clouding her judgment. Who did she want to be? A woman who let Brandon define her? Or a woman who stood back up, even if she was shaking? Harper lifted her chin. "I'll come." And other. Colton nodded once, then helped her into the SUV, making sure she didn't slip on the wet pavement. Inside, warm light washed over her face. The leather seats smelled faintly of cedar, expensive yet comforting. As the vehicle glided through Manhattan traffic, she stared out the window, watching the rain streak across the glass like fading scars. Colton sat beside her, not too close, but close enough that she felt steadier. "We're taking you somewhere safe," he said. "You need rest, not fear. It's really days of awe. 2-5 will. Rest." She barely remembered what that felt like. As the SUV climbed the private ramp into an underground garage, Harper realized they had entered a residential tower, one she recognized from magazines, the Rivers Residences. The kind of place where penthouses sold for 10 digits and privacy was guarded like a national secret. "Colton, this is too much," she whispered. "It's necessary," he replied simply. A private elevator carried them upward. The doors opened into a penthouse bathed in warm gold lighting, soft rugs, tall windows overlooking the city. Nothing about it felt intimidating. Instead, it felt safe. A team was already there. A doctor, a nutritionist, even a stylist with a neatly arranged kit. Harper stiffened. "What is this?" she asked. Colton stepped forward. "This is the part where you stop surviving and start rebuilding." Her throat tightened. "I don't need." "Yes, you do," he said gently. "Someone took everything from you. I'm giving you space to take something back, starting with your strength and then your presence." She looked away, her voice cracking. "I don't recognize myself anymore." "That's exactly why we're doing this." For the next several hours, Harper let the professionals examine her, treat her pain, replenish what stress and surgery had drained from her. They gave her warm broth, gentle medication, and a robe softer than anything she'd ever worn. Her hair was washed and dried, her skin warmed with steam to soothe the cold ache in her bones. When she finally stood before a mirror, she almost didn't believe the reflection staring back. Still fragile, yes. Still healing, yes. But her eyes had life again. Gravity, determination. The stylist stepped back. "You look like yourself," she said softly. "The version of you that remembers who she is." Harper touched the mirror with trembling fingers. She did feel different. Not fixed, but awakening. Behind her, Colton watched quietly, his expression softer than she'd ever seen. "I need you at the gala," he said. "Not as my guest. As the woman whose work is about to change everything." Her heart skipped. "The gala? Brandon will be there." Colton met her eyes in the mirror. Exactly. A spark of something fierce lit inside her chest. Maybe courage, maybe anger, maybe both. Before she could answer, her phone buzzed again. This time, it wasn't a warning. It was a video of Brandon in her old apartment, holding something that belonged to her. And when she pressed play, the words he spoke made her blood turn to ice. The moment Harper pressed play, the video filled the penthouse suite with Brandon's voice, smug, calm, dripping with the same confidence that once charmed her. He stood in what used to be their living room, the apartment she had turned into a home. Now it looked foreign, colder. Like him, Brandon leaned casually against the kitchen counter, holding something small and familiar between his fingers. Her journal. The journal where she had drafted early algorithm notes. The journal she thought she'd lost during her surgery. "Harper won't survive without me," Brandon said into the camera, his tone almost amused. "She never could. And after the gala, she won't have a reason to try." Her stomach twisted violently. "I've erased every trace of her work, every file, every note. And once this deal is signed," he smirked, tapping the journal against his palm, "no one will ever know she had anything to do with it." The video shook slightly as he moved toward the door. "And if she tries to fight back?" He shrugged. "She's too weak, too unstable. The board already believes it, and soon, so will everyone else." The screen went black. Harper felt the breath tear from her lungs. She had expected betrayal. She had even expected manipulation. But hearing him declare her worthless, her non-existent, as if she were a disposable footnote, carved something raw and furious into her bones. Her fingers dug into the edge of the counter. "I can't believe I married that man," she whispered. Colton stood a few feet away, arms crossed, his expression unreadable but undeniably dark. "You didn't marry a man," he said quietly. "You married a mask." Harper's chest trembled. "He really thinks he can erase me." Colton stepped closer. "Only if you let him." She looked up at him, then really looked. His eyes weren't cold like Brandon's. They burned with something sharper, something protective, something dangerous. "Harper," Colton continued, "this is no longer about survival. This is about reclaiming your name, your work, your dignity. And the gala is the only place where the whole world is watching." She exhaled shakily. "You want me to walk into the same room as him? After everything he's done?" "No," Colton said. "I want you to walk in stronger than him." The stylist, who had been pretending to busy herself with makeup brushes, looked up. "You have the kind of presence that turns a room," she said softly. "Let us help you use it." Harper touched the journal in the frozen frame on her phone screen. She remembered the nights she stayed awake, refining those concepts while Brandon slept, bragging to his colleagues about his breakthrough. She remembered how he dismissed her exhaustion, her creativity, her ambitions. He had stolen her ideas. He had stolen her voice. But he couldn't steal her strength, not unless she handed it to him. She squared her shoulders. "What do I need to do?" Colton allowed the ghost of a smile. "It starts with being seen, not as the woman who broke, but as the woman who wasn't destroyed." In that moment, the penthouse lights reflected against the windows, casting a halo around her silhouette. For the first time in months, Harper looked like someone rising. Colton picked up a sealed envelope from the table and placed it in her hands. "This," he said, "is the one thing Brandon never expected you to have. And once you reveal it at the gala, his empire will collapse in minutes." Harper's pulse raced. "What's inside?" Colton stepped back, letting the weight of the moment hang in the air. "Proof," he said. "Enough to end him." Her fingers tightened on the envelope, and before she could open it, the penthouse security alarm blared. Someone had forced their way into the building. The shrill echo of the penthouse security alarm sliced through the room, sharp enough to freeze Harper mid-breath. The envelope in her hand nearly slipped from her fingers. Lights along the ceiling flickered from warm gold to pulsing red, casting the entire suite in a tense, urgent glow. Colton was already moving. "Stay behind me," he ordered. His voice low but firm, no hesitation, no uncertainty. The stylist gasped and backed toward the wall, while the medical assistant quickly shut her equipment case. Harper's pulse thundered in her ears. She wasn't prepared for another blow, not physically, not emotionally, but the universe seemed intent on giving her no rest. A security guard rushed into the room seconds later. "Sir, someone breached the private elevator," he said. "They bypassed the biometric lock." I was go. Only a handful of people in New York could bypass a lock like that. And Harper knew one of them. "Brandon," she whispered. Colton's gaze hardened. "He must have followed you here." Harper's stomach twisted. The idea of Brandon invading this space, her one place of safety, made something deep inside her crack open, sharp as glass. She had once trusted this man with her life. Now she wasn't sure he wouldn't take it. Colton turned to the guard. "Seal the upper floor. No exits until I say." "If you takes, miss." "Also Jane." "Yes, sir." The guard vanished as quickly as he came. Harper pressed a hand to her chest, trying to steady her racing heart. Why is he doing this? If he completed the deal, he'd be out of my life forever. Colton stepped closer, his voice gentler now. He didn't complete the deal. Not yet. You still hold the missing pieces. And he knows what happens to him if you expose the truth. The truth. Her proof. The envelope in her hand. She clutched it tighter. "Colton," she whispered, "what if he takes this from me?" "He won't," he said. "Not tonight." But just as he spoke, footsteps echoed outside the double doors. Slow, measured, sinister. Harper's breath hitched. The sound was unmistakable. Colton positioned himself between her and the entrance. The stylist quietly slipped behind a pillar, trembling. The air felt charged, heavy with the possibility of confrontation. And then, the footsteps stopped. A silence followed. A silence thick enough to choke on. Colton raised a hand to signal the guard waiting by the stairwell. But before the man could respond, a loud crash exploded through the space. The double doors burst inward, slamming against the walls so violently they splintered. The security guard staggered back, disarmed in one brutal motion. Harper couldn't breathe. Standing in the doorway, soaked from the rain, chest heaving, eyes wild with something twisted and desperate, Brandon Hale looked nothing like the man she had once married. He looked unhinged. "Harper," he snarled, ignoring everyone else in the room. "You're coming with me." Colton stepped forward, voice like steel. "She's not going anywhere with you." Brandon laughed, a chilling, broken sound. "You think she wants to stay with you? You think she'd trust a man who's been watching her for months?" Harper froze. Colton tensed. Brandon smirked, wiping rain from his brow. "Oh, she didn't know? You didn't tell her how you knew every detail of her life? How you got her file? How you tracked her location before you even met?" Harper's pulse stopped. "Colton," she whispered, stepping back. "What is he talking about?" Colton didn't look away from Brandon. "He's twisting the truth." And Rester. But Brandon's smile widened. "Tell her, Rivers," he taunted. "Tell her the real reason you wanted her at that gala." Harper felt the envelope slip slightly from her trembling fingers. And in that moment, she suddenly wasn't sure which man in the room she should fear more. For a moment, the penthouse felt too small for the three of them. Harper trembling near the window, Brandon blocking the doorway like a storm waiting to strike, and Colton standing firm, shoulders squared, refusing to yield even an inch of space. "Say it," Brandon hissed. "Tell her how long you've been watching her, how you dug into every file with her name on it, how you didn't just stumble into her life, you infiltrated it." Colton didn't flinch, but he also didn't deny it. Harper's throat tightened. "Colton, please tell me he's lying." Finally, Colton turned toward her. His expression wasn't cold, it was pained, conflicted, as if this moment had been waiting at the edge of his decisions for far too long. "He's twisting it," Colton said quietly, "but there is some truth." The words hit Harper like a bruise. Brandon laughed, a jagged, ugly sound. "Some truth? You hired private investigators to track her movements. You collected her old project files. You even knew about her surgery before she left the hospital." Harper stumbled back, hand pressed to her stomach. "Is that true?" she whispered. Colton stepped forward, gently, slowly, like approaching someone wounded. "Harper, listen to me. Everything I did, every step, was to understand how Hale Analytics was manipulating their data. And the deeper I dug, the more I realized the victim was you." "That's not an answer," she whispered. "I wasn't watching you," he said. "I was watching him." "And Fortin?" Brandon scoffed, rolling his eyes. "What a noble hero." Colton's jaw tightened. "You were stealing her work. You were burying financial trails under her name. You made her the liability while profiting off her brilliance. That's why I investigated, not to manipulate her, but to protect her." Harper's eyes filled, not with tears, but with confusion and a growing ache in her chest. "Why didn't you tell me sooner?" "Because you were drowning," Colton said softly. "And I didn't want you to think I was throwing you another weight instead of a lifeline." Brandon stepped forward, ignoring the guard's warning growl. "See, he thinks he can spin everything. He doesn't protect you, Harper. He controls the narrative just like I did." Harper flinched at the comparison. Colton's gaze sharpened. "Don't you ever put me in the same category as you." But the damage was already slipping into Harper's thoughts like poison. Her voice trembled. "Colton, did you really know about my surgery before I told you?" He hesitated 1 second too long. Harper's stomach twisted. Brandon smirked in triumph. Colton exhaled, defeated. "Yes, I did." Her world tilted again. Colton stepped forward. "I didn't approach you because you were weak. I approached you because you were in danger. You still are." Brandon snapped. "Don't listen to him. You think he cares about you? He cares about one thing, bringing down my company. You're a convenient tool, just like you were for me." Harper's knees nearly buckled. "Stop, both of you, stop." She pressed a hand to her forehead, vision blurring. The betrayal from Brandon, the half-truths from Colton, the fear twisting inside her, everything collided in a dizzying haze. Colton reached for her. Brandon lunged forward, but before either man could touch her, the building shook with a loud boom from below. Lights flickered. Sirens blared through the penthouse. The guard's voice crackled through the intercom. Lockdown breach. Multiple intruders. Unknown affiliation. Colton's expression darkened in an instant. Brandon's eyes widened. But Harper stood frozen, her heart pounding with a new kind of terror. Because the intruders weren't coming for Colton. They were coming for her. The penthouse trembled again, this time hard enough that one of the crystal vases toppled from a side table and shattered across the marble floor. Harper flinched as shards skittered toward her feet. Brandon swore under his breath, glancing wildly toward the private hallway that led to the elevator bank. Colton moved instantly, grabbing Harper's arm and pulling her behind him. The lights flickered twice more before emergency panels snapped on, casting the room in an eerie silver glow. "What is happening?" Harper whispered, her voice thin with panic. Colton's expression was razor-sharp. Someone forced their way through the secondary security layer. That shouldn't be possible unless... The guard's voice crackled again through the intercom. Unknown tactical unit, masked, armed, they're demanding access to the penthouse level. Harper felt her blood run cold. Why would anyone? Brandon cut her off with a bitter laugh. "Oh, come on, Harper. Connect the dots. You think Rivers is the only one who's been watching you? You think exposing me doesn't step on the wrong toes? You were part of every major project at Hale Analytics. You touched sensitive data Brandon wasn't supposed to have." Colton shot him a lethal glare. "And whose fault is that? You stole her work. You dragged her into this because you were too incompetent to build anything real." But Brandon wasn't listening. His breaths were quick, uneven, his face pale in the emergency lighting. "They're not here for me," he muttered, backing away toward the kitchen counter. "They're here for her." Harper's knees weakened. "Me? Why would?" "Because you're the only loose end," Brandon snapped. "Once you're gone, there's nothing tying the stolen data back to me. Nothing proving I forged your name. Nothing proving I used your algorithm without permission. Once you disappear, the deal's clean." Harper's heart nearly stopped. "Are you saying you sent them?" Brandon looked at her, and for a split second, just one, she saw guilt flicker behind his eyes. "They weren't supposed to come here," he whispered. "They were supposed to intercept you before Rivers got involved." Harper staggered backward. Her breath came in sharp, shallow bursts. Colton's voice dropped to a deadly calm. "You endangered her life for a payout. Pathetic." Brandon shook his head frantically. "You don't understand these people. Don't let liabilities walk away." "And Harper? She's the biggest liability of all." The elevator dinged. A metallic echo that felt like a blade pressed to the back of the neck. Colton moved instantly. "Harper, get behind the security wall. Move." He pressed his hand to a hidden biometric panel. A sliding wall began to open slow, too slow. Harper rushed toward it, legs trembling, clutching the envelope, holding the proof that could destroy Brandon. But before she could reach safety, the elevator doors slid open. A group of masked men stepped inside the penthouse level, boots silent on the marble, weapons raised. They moved with military precision. Harper froze. Brandon grabbed her arm from behind, yanking her backward like a shield. "You're coming with me," he hissed. "They won't shoot if I'm holding you." "Let her go," Colton roared, advancing toward them. One of the masked men lifted a hand, ordering Colton to stop. Harper couldn't breathe. She could barely think. Then the lead intruder spoke. Not to Colton, not to Brandon, but directly to her. "Miss Lane," the masked voice said, cold and deliberate, "you need to come with us. You're not safe with either of these men." Brandon and Colton both froze. Harper's heartbeat thundered, because the voice behind the mask was one she recognized. The masked man stepped forward, boots silent against the marble, weapon lowered but ready. Harper's breath hitched. She knew that voice, subtle southern undertone, clipped consonants, the faint rasp that only came out when he was under pressure. Her pulse tripped violently. "Mason?" she whispered. Brandon's grip on her arm tightened. "What?" No, that's impossible." But it wasn't. Mason Ward, Brandon's former partner at Hale Analytics. The man Brandon swore had abandoned the company 2 years ago with zero explanation. The man Harper had once considered a friend, someone who always treated her ideas with respect, someone who disappeared suddenly after a massive internal scandal Brandon refused to talk about. The masked figure removed his helmet. Mason's face appeared older, harder, eyes carved with exhaustion and something dangerously close to regret. "Harper," he said quietly, "you need to come with us. You're in more danger than you realize." Colton took a step forward, ice in his voice. You're not taking her anywhere. Two of Mason's men immediately raised their weapons toward Colton. Harper cried out, instinctively reaching to stop them, but Brandon yanked her back. Mason raised a hand. Stand down. We don't hurt civilians. Colton's jaw tightened. I'm not a civilian. That's debatable, Mason replied. Brandon's panic sharpened into anger. What the hell is this, Mason? I thought we had an understanding. We don't, Mason snapped, stepping closer. The moment you forged signatures and funneled stolen algorithms into offshore accounts, you crossed a line even I wouldn't touch. Brandon paled. You said you'd help me clean it up. I said I'd stop the wrong people from killing you, Mason corrected coldly. Not that I'd protect you from consequences. Harper's breath trembled. Mason, why me? Why now? His gaze softened, just slightly. Because you're the only one who never deserved any of this. And because your name is on documents tied to people who do not forgive debts. Colton stiffened. Which people? Mason hesitated. The kind who operate outside law, outside jurisdiction. Brandon didn't just steal tech, he sold access, classified access, and he used Harper's credentials to do it. Harper staggered. What? No, I never. We know you didn't, Mason said, but that doesn't matter to them. Colton stepped between Harper and the intruders. She's under my protection. In Esclam. Mason's eyes narrowed. That protection won't matter if she stays with you. They know your face too, Rivers. You've been digging into them for months. They won't hesitate. Colton's voice dropped into something lethal. I'm not letting you take her. We're not here to take her, Mason said. We're here to get her out before the other group arrives. Brandon stiffened. What other group? Mason looked directly at him. The ones you owe. The air froze. Harper felt her pulse in every inch of her body. Colton turned sharply to Harper, lowering his voice. You trust me, right? She hesitated. She trusted him more than Brandon, but after tonight, trust felt fragile, breakable. Mason stepped forward. Harper, please, whatever you think you know, it's worse. You need to leave with us right now, or you won't survive the next hour. Colton blocked him instantly. She's not going anywhere until she chooses. Pray. Harper stared at the two men, one who had betrayed her trust by omission, and one who had vanished without explanation years ago, only to return with guns and riddles. Her chest tightened painfully. Then, a second explosion shook the building. Lights flickered violently. The floor vibrated beneath their feet. Mason swore under his breath. They're here. Harper's breath caught, and as the fire alarm began to howl, the elevator dinged again, this time opening onto a group she had never seen before, their weapons even heavier, their expressions far deadlier. The elevator doors slid open again, but these weren't Mason's men, nor were they men Harper recognized. They moved like shadows, dressed in matte black tactical armor, with no insignias, no identifiers, no hesitation. Their weapons were heavier, military-grade, and their formation was surgical. Colton cursed under his breath. Mason's entire unit stiffened, guns rising in a synchronized arc. Brandon stumbled backward, knocking over a glass sculpture. No, they weren't supposed to come here. Not this soon. Harper froze. This soon? He knew they were coming. The leader of the new group stepped forward, his voice altered by a modulator. Harper Lane, he said, ignoring everyone else. You need to come with us immediately. Colton stepped in front of her. Over my dead body. 2,000. And after so. That, the soldier replied coldly, can be arranged. Weapons clicked in unison. Mason's jaw tightened. Don't do this. She's under our protection. She's under no one's protection, the masked leader countered. She's exposed. And she carries the one thing our employers cannot allow her to reveal. His gaze flicked to the envelope in her hand. Harper instinctively drew it closer to her chest. Colton saw the movement and shifted, shielding her even more with his body. She's not going anywhere. You'll have to go through me. The soldier tilted his head, analyzing him. Rivers. You've been a nuisance. But you're predictable. She's not. Harper felt ice pour into her veins. What did that mean? Before anyone could speak, Brandon darted forward like a coward, lunging for the nearest exit. I'll give you whatever you want, he blurted. Just leave me out of this. Mason's eyes widened. Brandon, shut up. But the soldier raised a hand. We don't want you, Mr. Hale. You're insignificant. You're a liability who oversold his worth." The insult landed like a slap, and for a moment Brandon's ego flared before fear swallowed it again. The leader shifted his attention back to Harper. "You have 5 seconds to step forward. 5 seconds. 5 seconds to decide who to trust. 5 seconds to decide if she even wanted to survive." Mason whispered urgently, "Harper, if you go with them, you disappear. Permanently." "It one of them, Asham." Colton added, firm but calm, "Stay with me. I'll get you out, I promise." Brandon hissed, "Go with them. It's the only way you won't drag me down with you." That last line snapped something inside her. She straightened, still shaking, still wounded, but with a fire that hadn't burned this brightly in years. "No," Harper said. Her voice quivered, but it carried. "No more running. No more letting men decide what happens to me." All 3 factions froze. Harper lifted the envelope. "This is mine. I created the algorithm. I am the author of the work you're all fighting over, and I will decide what happens to it." The soldier's visor glinted. "Then decide wisely." Harper drew a breath, heart pounding painfully. "I'm not going with you," she said. The soldier straightened. "Then you'll die here." He raised his hand, giving a silent signal. Mason shouted, "Get down!" Gunfire erupted. Bullets splintered glass, tore into walls, ricocheted off marble. Colton grabbed Harper, pulling her behind the overturned couch. Mason's men formed a defensive line. Smoke filled the penthouse. Screams, shouts, the roar of chaos. Harper clutched the envelope, coughing, chest burning. Then, a sudden, terrifying quiet. The masked soldiers had changed tactics. Through the haze, Harper saw 2 of them break formation and sprint not toward Colton or Mason, but directly toward her. And one of them was holding a needle filled with something clear, lethal, and meant only for her. The soldier lunged with the needle, its metallic glint slicing through the haze of smoke. Harper's heart seized, time warped, stretching thin like glass about to shatter. Instinct kicked in before thought could form. She dove sideways, the needle grazing her sleeve but missing her skin by inches. Colton grabbed the attacker mid-strike, slamming him into the marble column with a force Harper didn't know he possessed. The second masked man closed in from behind, but Mason intercepted, tackling him to the ground with a grunt. Gunfire had paused, but only for a breath, as if the room itself was preparing for the next blow. "Harper, move!" Colton shouted. Her body obeyed before her mind did. She crawled behind a toppled bookshelf, wincing as pain shot through her abdomen. She clutched the envelope tighter. No matter what happened tonight, she could not let it fall into their hands. Through the smoke, she saw Mason elbow his attacker, roll, and fire a warning shot. The masked soldier retreated, regrouping with the others near the elevator. They were repositioning, calculating their next attempt. These weren't men acting on impulse, they were following a plan. Harper forced herself to breathe, pushing past the instinct to collapse. Brandon, shaking violently, had taken cover behind the kitchen island. His face was ghostly pale, his voice trembling as he whispered, "This wasn't supposed to happen. They weren't supposed to involve her." Harper snapped, "I think they were always planning to involve me." Brandon didn't respond, couldn't. He was unraveling faster than the smoke dispersing around them. Colton crouched beside Harper, one hand braced against the floor, the other gripping a fallen soldier's weapon. His voice was low, urgent. "Listen to me. They want you alive but not unharmed. That needle wasn't meant to kill you outright." She swallowed hard. "So what was it meant to do?" "Silence you," he said. Permanently. A violent tremor shook her hands. Fear clawed up her spine, but beneath it anger simmered, a growing fire that felt dangerously close to strength. Mason joined them, wiping blood from his cheek. "They're repositioning. They'll break through in 60 seconds. We need to get her out." Colton nodded. "Security stairwell? No good. They've already blocked it. Service lift? Offline." Harper clenched her jaw. "Then how do we leave?" Colton's eyes flicked toward the shattered windows overlooking the skyline. "There's one way." Harper stared at him. "Colton, we're 40 stories up. We won't be jumping," he replied, already moving toward the window. "The balcony connects to the adjacent tower. It's a narrow pass, but we can cross." End quote. Brandon's head shot up. "You're insane. She can't make that. She's barely recovered." Harper glared at him, voice steady. "I can do more than you think." Brandon opened his mouth, but no words came. For the first time, he seemed truly afraid of losing the control he once held over her. Colton smashed the window completely, cool night air rushing into the penthouse like a gulp of freedom. The wind was fierce, tugging at Harper's hair and sleeves, but she stepped toward the opening anyway, because staying meant death. Mason covered their backs, shouting, "They're breaching again! Move now!" Harper gripped the railing. Below her, Manhattan glowed like a constellation. Above her, smoke curled into the moonlight. She had no choice. She swung one leg over the ledge. And then, a gunshot cracked. Harper gasped as something slammed into the railing inches from her hand. She looked back. The masked leader had broken through the smoke, weapon steady, aimed directly at her heart. And he said something that made her blood freeze. "If you fall, we take the others instead." The wind whipped violently across the shattered opening, pulling at Harper's clothes as she clung to the balcony ledge. Her knuckles whitened. The city glimmered below her like a dangerous sea of light, dizzying and indifferent. She could feel Colton right behind her, muscles tense, one hand gripping her waist to keep her steady. Then came the voice. "If you fall," the masked leader said, weapon locked on her, "we take the others instead." Others. Colton. Mason. Even Brandon terrified, shaking, but still human despite everything. Harper's breath froze. She looked over her shoulder, meeting the masked leader's gaze, or at least the dark glass reflecting her own trembling silhouette. "You don't want them," she said shakily. "You want me." "Correct," the soldier replied. "Our orders prioritize your retrieval. Alive, mobile, obedient." Something inside her snapped. Obedient. That was the word Brandon used when he dismissed her ideas, when he told her she wasn't meant to lead, when he forced her into silence. Not anymore. "Harper," Colton murmured, voice steadying her through the roar of wind. "You don't have to do what he says." But she did have to choose right now because hesitation could kill them all. She straightened her spine, gripping the ledge with renewed strength. "If you shoot," she said to the masked leader, "you risk losing the algorithm forever." He didn't respond, but Harper saw the slight tension in his posture, a hesitation. Her work was her shield now. Mason seized the opening. "Harper, keep him talking. Buy us seconds." Seconds. That was all they ever needed. Harper drew a slow breath, turning just enough to face the soldiers without letting go of the ledge. The wind stung her eyes, but she kept her gaze locked on the leader. "You don't even know what's inside this envelope," she said. "For all you know, it could be incomplete." "It's not," he replied coldly. "We know what it contains." That sent a new shiver through her. Someone within Brandon's old network was feeding information to this group. Harper lifted the envelope slightly. "If you shoot, I drop this. 40 stories. It will disintegrate before you ever retrieve it." A beat, a calculation, a flicker of uncertainty. Colton leaned closer, whispering, "You're doing great. Stay with me." Then, without warning, Brandon shouted from behind the kitchen island, "I'll bring her to you. Just don't kill me." Harper's eyes widened. The masked leader raised his weapon again. Mason cursed under his breath. Colton moved to shield her fully. Chaos was seconds away from exploding again. But Harper acted first. She shoved the envelope backward into Colton's hands. "Don't let it fall." Then she swung one leg onto the narrow ledge connecting the two buildings. The masked leader lunged. "No," Brandon screamed. Colton grabbed her waist. But Harper was already committing to the crossing. She stepped out onto the ledge. Wind roared past her ears. Her vision blurred. Her balance swayed dangerously. Mason shouted something she couldn't hear. The soldiers surged forward. Colton nearly climbed onto the ledge after her. Harper took another step, and another. Her heart hammered like a war drum. Below her, nothing but 40 stories of open air. Above her, the moon watched like a silent witness. Then, a bullet fired. Harper didn't feel pain. What she felt was impact. A jolt that sent her body lurching sideways. Her foot slipped. Her fingers clawed desperately for the metal railing. And as the world tilted beneath her, Harper felt herself falling. Harper didn't scream. She expected terror to rip from her throat as gravity seized her body. But instead, the world went silent. The wind rushed past her ears in a hollow roar, the city lights streaking upward as she plunged. Time fractured into shards. The moon above her, the ledge slipping away, Brandon's horrified face shrinking, Colton lunging too late. But in the space between heartbeat and impact, a hand caught her. Her descent stopped so suddenly her ribs seized with pain. A jolt shot through her arms as fingers closed tightly around her wrist. "Harper, hold on." Colton's voice raw, urgent, terrified in a way she had never heard before. She gasped, vision shaking. She looked up to see him sprawled on the narrow ledge, half his body hanging over the edge, one hand gripping the metal rail, the other locked impossibly around her. Wind tore at them both, threatening to rip them apart. "Don't look down," he commanded. She looked down. 40 stories of empty air. Cars below like glowing insects. Her breath vanished. "Harper," Colton barked. "Look at me." She dragged her gaze upward. His eyes, usually so controlled, so unreadable, were blazing with something fierce. Something desperate. Something human. "I've got you," he said. "I'm not letting go." Her fingers trembled violently. "Colton, I can't. My arm." "Yes, you can. You're stronger than you think. Take my other hand." She reached, muscles screaming. Their fingers brushed, then slipped. "No!" Colton roared, tightening his grip on her one wrist, straining to pull her higher. His body shook with the effort. A drop of sweat slid down his temple despite the cold night. Behind him, gunfire erupted in the penthouse again. Mason's voice shouted orders. Glass shattered. Brandon begged. Soldiers barked commands. But all Harper heard was the pounding of her own heart and the scrape of her boots against the tower's steel exterior. Colton gritted his teeth. "Harper, listen to me. You are not dying tonight. Not after everything you've survived. Not after what that bastard did to you. Do you understand?" Tears blurred her vision, not from fear, but from something deeper. Rage. Strength. Rebirth. With a guttural cry, she swung her free arm upward again. Their hands locked fully, this time warm, solid, alive. "I have you," Colton whispered, voice breaking. Using every shred of strength left in her battered body, Harper braced her feet against the building's facade. Colton heaved, muscles straining, and together they lifted her inch by inch until she collapsed onto the narrow ledge beside him. For a moment, they just breathed. Then Colton wrapped an arm around her shoulders, pulling her into him. Not possessive, not controlling. Human. "You scared the hell out of me," he whispered into her hair. Harper's chest shook. "I scared myself." He pulled back enough to look at her. "Don't ever do that again." She gave him a broken, breathless laugh. "I wasn't planning to." But the moment shattered when a bullet whizzed past, embedding into the concrete inches from her hand. They both ducked instinctively. Through the shattered penthouse window, the masked intruders regrouped. "They're coming around the balcony," Colton said. "We need to move now." Harper nodded, gripping his hand. But when they turned toward the connecting ledge, a familiar figure stepped out from the shadows of the adjacent tower. Brandon. His face streaked with sweat and dust, his eyes wild, one hand holding something metallic. Not a gun. A detonator. "Harper," he said, voice trembling with madness. "If I can't have my life back, neither can you." Harper's blood turned to ice, and Brandon's thumb began pressing down on the trigger. Brandon's thumb hovered over the detonator, trembling violently, his face twisted by desperation and the crumbling illusion of control. The wind whipped across the narrow ledge, howling between the towers like the city itself, was warning him, warning all of them, that this moment would change everything. "Brandon," Harper said, her voice steady despite the terror slamming inside her chest, "you don't want to do this." "Yes. I do." His voice cracked, high and brittle. "You ruined everything. You were supposed to help me, Harper. You were supposed to stay quiet, stay small, let me lead." Colton stepped forward, shielding Harper slightly. "Brandon, listen to yourself. You're spiraling. Put the detonator down before you kill all of us." Brandon barked a broken laugh. "You think I care about you? You think I don't know what you've been doing behind the scenes? Buying up my shareholders? Undermining my deals? Digging into things that weren't yours to touch?" Colton's jaw tightened, but he stayed silent. Harper took a slow breath. "Brandon? What did you rig the explosive to?" His eyes flickered, and that tiny movement told her everything. "The gala," she whispered. "You planned to use it there." Brandon's expression twisted. It was supposed to be a scare tactic, a distraction, something to control the narrative. His voice dropped, almost childlike. But then you left me, Harper. You walked away. Harper's chest tightened, not with love, not with pity, but with the deep, painful recognition that she had once shared a life with a man this broken. Brandon, she said softly, you're not thinking clearly. You're cornered, but you still have a choice. Let go. Stop this before it destroys everything left of you. Wanster prescribes entelo. For a flicker of a moment, his eyes softened, glazed with something like regret. Then it vanished. No one leaves me, Brandon whispered. Not without consequence. His thumb pressed down. Down! Mason screamed from behind them. But instead of an explosion, a sharp metallic click echoed. Nothing happened. Brandon stared at the detonator, confused, slapping it with shaking hands. No, it should've. Why isn't it? Colton took a slow step forward. You really thought you outsmarted Cross River's security? Mason added from the balcony. We disabled your signal the moment you entered the building. Brandon froze. Harper watched as realization crashed over him like a tidal wave. His knees buckled, and he crumpled onto the cold metal ledge, mumbling, "This wasn't supposed to happen. This wasn't. But the moment of quiet shattered instantly. One of the masked soldiers, previously knocked unconscious, dragged himself onto the adjacent balcony, lifting a handgun shakily. Colton shoved Harper behind him. Stay down. A shot fired. Stone shattered near Colton's head. Mason returned fire, but the soldier ducked behind a pillar, repositioning. Harper's lungs tightened. She looked at Brandon, who was curled on the ledge, eyes empty. He wasn't going to survive this night, not emotionally, not legally, maybe not physically. But she wasn't going to let anyone else die because of him. Colton, she whispered urgently, we need to move. He's reloading. Colton nodded, grabbing her hand. We're going across the ledge, now. But as they started to move, a second masked man appeared from above, rappelling down the tower like a spider. His boots hit the ledge, blocking their path entirely. Harper's breath caught. He aimed the gun directly at her. No more chances, he said. Come with us, or... A sudden roar of engines drowned out his voice. 3 black helicopters swept into view from behind the skyscrapers, their searchlights blasting the night open. Mason's eyes widened. That's not my team, he muttered. Colton tensed, pulling Harper closer. And before anyone could react, a voice boomed from the helicopter's loudspeaker. Harper Lane, you're under federal protection. Stand by for extraction. If you ready, says Foreign. Wind from the helicopters ripped across the ledge, nearly knocking Harper off balance again. The masked soldiers shielded their eyes. Brandon curled into himself, shaking violently, as if the world he built and destroyed was now collapsing on his shoulders. Colton pulled Harper closer, steadying her against the raging wind. Federal protection? That can't be right. Someone tipped them off. Mason, squinting up through the light, muttered, It sure as hell wasn't me. If you want to vote. A voice thundered again from the loudspeaker. Harper Lane, we have evidence confirming your identity theft, forged signatures, and misappropriated intellectual property under your name. You are a protected witness. Stand by for secure extraction. Harper stared upward, stunned. Protected witness. Here. After months of being treated like the liability, the weak link, the burden, now the federal government acknowledged she was the victim, not the villain. Brandon tried to paint her as. Brandon screamed through the wind. No, she's lying. She's manipulating all of you. She signed the documents. One of the federal spotlights pivoted and landed squarely on him. A voice responded, cold and definitive. Brandon Hale, you are under federal investigation. Do not attempt to flee. Brandon's face drained to chalk. He stumbled backward, nearly slipping off the ledge as he begged, Harper, please tell them I didn't tell them. Harper met his eyes. There was no fear left. No love. Only truth. You stole my work, she said, her voice steady above the roaring blades. You stole my name. And you tried to silence me permanently. Brandon's mouth opened, but no words came out. The wind swallowed whatever lies he tried to form. Mason tapped his earpiece, listening. The feds are clearing the floors below. They're coming up fast. One of the masked mercenaries lunged for Harper, desperate to complete his mission before the authorities reached them. But Mason fired a warning shot that sent him retreating against the tower's glass. The helicopters lowered, ropes descending. Agents rappelled toward them in swift, coordinated motion. Colton leaned close to Harper, his voice low, strained with urgency. "Harper, you need to go with them. They can keep you safe until the gala." "The gala?" she echoed. "That's where we expose him," Colton said. "Publicly, legally, permanently. Tonight was chaos. Tomorrow is justice." On so. She tightened her grip on the envelope still clutched in her hand. Inside it, proof capable of ending Brandon's entire empire. "What about you?" she asked softly. Colton gave a faint smile. A different kind of smile. Warmer. "I'll be right behind you. I'm not letting you face this alone." But before she could respond, an agent landed beside them, helmet glinting beneath the helicopter lights. "Miss Lane," he said firmly, "step forward. You first. Thanks for watching." Harper hesitated, not from fear, but from the weight of everything that had led to this moment. Her marriage ending in betrayal. Her identity nearly erased. Her life almost taken. Her truth buried under lies. No more. She stepped forward. But as the agent reached for her, his radio crackled violently. "New threat detected North Tower, side possible sniper." Harper froze. Colton's expression snapped into sharp awareness. "Get down." "It's not Mater." A bullet sliced through the air, hitting the metal railing inches from where Harper had been standing. Another shot fired closer. Deadlier. The agents scrambled, forming a shield around her. Mason shouted, "They're trying to eliminate the witness before she reaches federal custody." Harper ducked behind Colton's shoulder, heart pounding as bullets ricocheted around them. A final command came through the federal radio. "Sniper is targeting Harper Lane directly. Evacuate immediately." Endifon. And as the agents lifted her toward the helicopter rope, the sniper's laser sight locked onto her chest. The laser sight hovered over Harper's chest, steady, merciless, final. The helicopter blades churned the air into a violent storm, agents shouting over radios, Colton lunging toward her, Mason firing blind shots toward the sniper's perch. For one suspended heartbeat, Harper felt the world freeze. Then, a single gunshot cracked through the night. But it wasn't aimed at her. The sniper's rifle jerked backward as he toppled from the tower's edge. Mason lowered his weapon, smoke curling from the barrel. "Target neutralized." He barked into his comm, breath ragged. Agents seized the moment. They clipped a harness around Harper's waist and pulled her upward toward the helicopter. The night wind stung her face, but she didn't close her eyes. Not anymore. She wanted to see the world she was finally rising above. Below, agents swarmed Brandon. He tried to run. He tried to bargain. He tried to claim innocence. None of it mattered now. A federal officer grabbed him as he screamed, "Harper, tell them I didn't tell them, please." But she simply stared down at him. No hate, no fear, only truth. "You did this to yourself," she said softly. As she was lifted into the helicopter, Colton grabbed the rope beneath her, climbing with powerful, deliberate movements. Mason covered them until the helicopter pulled away. And just like that, she was no longer prey. She was a protected witness. The last piece in a case that would topple an empire. The next morning, Harper stood at the center of the annual Manhattan Innovation Gala, a vision reborn. She wore a black satin gown that hugged her frame without erasing her strength, her hair pinned elegantly, her posture straight as steel. Cameras flashed the moment she entered. Whispers rippled across the ballroom. "That's Harper Lane, the whistleblower. And Anos, Tate on Tate and Daskes, the real creator of the Hale algorithm. She survived the river's siege. She's extraordinary." Colton entered beside her, not overshadowing her, but standing with the kind of pride a man feels when he knows the woman next to him saved herself long before he ever stepped in. The board members from Hale Analytics were escorted in handcuffs across a distant hallway. Brandon, exposed on every major news network, faced charges for fraud, identity theft, corporate espionage, and attempted murder. His empire crumbled in hours, shareholders abandoning him like a sinking ship. Harper took the stage. The ballroom fell silent. "My name," she began, "was once erased from my own work. My voice was silenced, my identity stolen. But tonight, I reclaim everything." Thunderous applause erupted, raw, electric, triumphant. She held up the envelope, the same one she nearly died protecting. "This proof," she said, "is no longer a secret. It is justice." Cameras flashed. Investors nodded. The room shifted. Colton stepped beside her, offering his hand not possessive, but in partnership. "Harper," he murmured, "there's something I hope you'll consider, after all this." She turned as he slipped a velvet box into her palm. Not a demand, not pressure. A choice. Inside lay a ring, simple, elegant, symbolizing not rescue but respect. Harper's eyes glistened. "Colton, I'm finally choosing for myself. And I'll wait," he whispered. She slipped the ring onto her finger, not as a promise of dependency, but as a declaration of her new beginning. The crowd erupted again. Cameras flashed like shooting stars. Harper Lane had not only survived, she had won. Fully, completely, undeniably. And the woman the world once underestimated had become unstoppable. So that's it, my friends. Our story comes to a close. And if you're still here, listening with me right now, it means something in Harper's journey touched your heart in a way that maybe you didn't expect. Maybe you saw a piece of your own pain in her strength, or a piece of your hope in her comeback. Life does that. It throws us into storms we never asked for, just to reveal the courage we didn't know we had. The Stoics used to say, "The obstacle is the way." Not because suffering is beautiful, but because what we become after enduring it is. Harper didn't rise because life was kind. She rose because she finally understood what Marcus Aurelius meant when he wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events." She took back her story. And you can, too. So if this story touched you, even just a little, let's keep walking this journey together. Like the video, share it with someone who might need a reminder of their own strength, and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the next story that just might heal a part of you. Because you matter more than you think.